Hey, good morning, friend. I've been sitting here debating whether or not I should do this or not, and I thought I'd just go ahead and run it up the poll and see who salutes. Um, I've been going through the book of James, and yesterday I was in James chapter 2, looking at the first few verses there, James chapter 2, and he talks about how to treat poor folks in the church. And I got to thinking back about, and this is going somewhere, so just stick with me. Um, when I was a kid, lived in Birmingham, 67, 68, somewhere around in there, 69. Uh, I went to Glen Irish Baptist Church, and Brother Terry Raymond would come by and pick me up, and I'd ride the bus. My brothers, we'd go. They'd go some. I don't know if I know they didn't go as much as I did, um, but I was, they had girls at that church, so I went. But they made me feel welcome, and I enjoyed going there. Brother LeGrand's my pastor. He was my pastor till he died. I still love the man and his ministry and his influence in my life. But I I look back at that and how they cared about me there, and we were we were we were poor, but we didn't look poor and we didn't act poor. You never knew what was going on behind the scenes. Um, my dad liked to drink a lot, and yeah, he'd wreck cars, and he didn't like to work too much, and that's a whole nother story. But we got evicted from our house there in Green Springs, um, but we moved to Madison, and we moved into Skyline Acres over there, and but and I did not realize as a kid and growing up that we were in as bad shape as we were, because that's just the way it was. That's just how you was raised. And looking back at it now, I really admire my mother for all that she did and the hard work that she put in. I mean, we wouldn't have had Christmas if it wasn't for Mom. uh, she bent over backwards to make ends meet, and Dad didn't care. Dad just, Mom would write the bills and give Dad the envelope, said, mail this. Well, he'd throw it on the dashboard of his car and forget about it. And so then, since he was doing sales, traveling sales, around Huntsville stuff, um, people couldn't call him. That was before cell phones, and so they'd call Mom at work. She worked at Sears, and so they could get her. And so, anyway, it was a situation that I didn't really recognize growing up in it. Uh, but then we got to we got to Madison, and I had ridden the bus. Used to ride the bus all the time to Glen Iris, and I loved it. And Brother Terry Raymond would come by and pick me up, and Brother LeGrand, I'd go out to eat with him after church, and he'd take me after church on Sunday night with his family, and they just welcomed me in. So when we moved to Madison, um, I didn't have that. I didn't have somebody that I didn't have a church home, and we tried a couple of different churches, but weren't really going until bus ministry came by, knocked on our door, and it was a church in Huntsville that was running a bus ministry, and they were gonna come by. Well, I spent 2 or 3 years in the bus ministry as a bus kid, and treated as an equal. That's the thing. They welcomed me in, and I wasn't no, there wasn't no, the members of the church and church families that were there were not any better than the kids that rode the bus. They treated us as equals, and they welcomed us in. So I thought, man, here it is. Yeah, this is what I've been looking for. And so the bus came by and picked me up, and took me to church, and the church is still there, and a good friend of mine is the pastor there now. And but when I went there, 50 something years ago, they were not friendly. They were not friendly to the bus kids, and the adults, they just ignored us. I don't remember any adult ever even saying hello. But went into the Sunday school class and went into church, and there was one guy and one kid that I remember picked on me, and you know, it wasn't no big deal. I just didn't feel welcome. I never went back, and I think maybe that that it was because I rode the bus. And so what got me to thinking about that was looking here in James chapter 2, where it talks about, he says, my brethren, have not the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ. Let me read this. The Lord of glory, with respect of persons. For if there come unto your assembly a man with a gold ring and goodly apparel, and there come also a poor man in vile raiment, and you have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing, and not gay like we think today. He's not in drag. And you have respect to him that weareth it. Of course, I guess that could be true for some churches today. Get back on the subject. And saying to him, sit thou here in a good place, and say to the poor, stand thou there, or sit under my footstool. Are ye not partial in yourselves, and are become judges of evil thoughts? And I was thinking about that phrase there, judges of evil thoughts. And you know, one of the favorite passages of folks who are living in sin is judge not that you be not judged in Matthew chapter 7. Well, that passage is not necessarily saying a blanket statement, don't judge. What that passage is saying is that if you're going to judge, you're going to be judged with the same judgment, so make sure you're right before you start trying to help somebody else. And that's what that passage in Matthew 7 is about. But unless you're a legitimate mind reader, you cannot judge a person's motive. You know, unless you're a legitimate mind reader, you don't know why somebody does something. You can see the what, you know, and Matthew 7:20 says, by their fruits you shall know them. You know, I'm not a judge, I'm just a fruit inspector. But I can see, you know, from your lifestyle, whether you love the Lord, at least, you know, it looks like you do. You go to church, carrying the Bible, you know, all that good stuff. And so, yeah, I say it all the time. What's down in the well comes up in the bucket. And so, you know, your life's going to show it. So, yeah, judging somebody's motive, though, as to why they do what they do is something that's what he's talking about when it condemns judging, because I don't know why you do it. You know, I take you at face value. James chapter 3 verse 10 says, out of the same mouth proceedeth blessings and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. And he's talking there about consistency in your speech, and we'll talk about that a little more later on. But your speech, you know, I can see what you do, and that tells me a little bit about, you know, you. I can judge. You know, I mean, if you're a parent and you want to be able to judge your kid's friends, or your daughter's boyfriend, or whatever, you need some discernment. You need to be able to judge, but your speech can give witness to who you are. You know, your speech, when he said there, out of the same mouth proceeded blessing and cursing, my brethren, these things ought not to be so. Do you remember back when Jesus was betrayed and Peter followed afar off, and somebody accused him of of being a follower of the Lord, and on the third try, when they came, they said, I believe you is with him. Well, it says there in Matthew chapter 26, says, and after a while there came him, and after a while came unto him they that stood by and said to Peter, surely thou art one of them, for thy speech betrayeth thee. In other words, they said, you talk like a follower of Jesus. And so what did Peter do? He started cussing, because he knew that, I've been talking right, I've been trying to live right, I've been trying to give a good testimony, and now I'm trying to cover it up. And so what did he do? He started cussing. And so I really have a problem with Christians that cuss. I don't think you think about it or don't realize how bad of a testimony it is, but it tells a little bit about who you are. So I can know the what, and I can know the who, but I can't know the why. It says in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14, 15 and 16, but the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. But he that is spiritual judges all things. And so if you're walking with the Lord, and you see something, if I see you, and you got your hair's messed up, I'm not judging you when I say, hey man, you ought to comb your hair or wash your face. And there's a lot of things we can judge, but one thing we can't judge is motive. We can't know the why. We can know the what, we can know the who, but we can't know the why. um, Matthew chapter 6, I call it the how to chapter in the Bible. It tells you how to pray, how to fast, how to give, and how to love. There's several things on there, but it says if you give to be seen of men, you have your reward. Hang on a second. Ah, sorry about that. Had to take a drink there. Um, he's talking about motive. He said you can give and give for the wrong reason is give to be seen. So he's talking about motive. But James chapter 2 says that if we try to judge poor folks, if we have poor people come into the church and people that aren't quite up to our standard, he says, are you not then partial in yourselves and become judge of evil thoughts? And that's what I was thinking about, that phrase there, judges of evil thoughts. Um, I don't know why somebody does what to do, and I can remember a guy in college. He'd sing, and he was a great singer, and but I wonder in the back of my mind sometimes by the way he acted when he got up there, if he was stuck on himself, and like to do it. And there's a lot of people do stuff for the wrong reason. They can do good stuff. I mean, I got to bless him when the guy sang, whether he did it for the right reason or not. But I really, I can't discount you because I don't know your motive. It says in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 5, therefore judge nothing before the time until the Lord comes, who will bring to light the hidden things of darkness and will make manifest the counsels of the heart. And then shall every man have praise of God. And the Lord knows why we do what we do, and the Lord knows why we're in the situation we're in. You know, and I think what we do, we judge folks. We tend to, you know, judge them by their social status or their financial status. But James 2 again talks about judging people when they come to church, and I mean you can't help but notice sometimes, but you really can't judge somebody by by what you see. James chapter 2 verse 2 and verse 3 again says, if there come into your assembly a man with a gold ring and goodly apparel, and they come in also a poor man in vile raiment, and ye have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing, and say unto him, sit thou here in a good place, and say to the poor, stand thou there, or sit here under my footstool. And he says, you're judging wrongly. You don't treat people on the basis of their financial status or their social status. How do we judge people? That's what I was thinking about. How do we judge folk? Well, he's poor and I'm not poor, so there must be something wrong with him. There must be something wrong with him, or he's poor because he's lazy. You don't know that. That might be true. I mean, it may well be true, but you don't know that. Well, he's poor because he's dishonest, or he's poor because he can't manage his money, or he's poor because he's just not real bright. Any and all of those things may be true, but you don't know that, and you really shouldn't treat somebody like that. I mean, everybody is somebody in the church. Everybody is somebody in the body of Christ, and they need a friend. I have looked. I've looked on Facebook, and I've asked friends about it, of a girl that I went to school with, and she was poor, and I didn't really have a lot of interaction with her other than maybe in a class or two one time. But my motorcycle broke down one night in front of her house. It's the middle of the night. Well, not middle, probably 9 o'clock. It's dark, and that was before cell phones. And so my motorcycle broke down in front of her house, and so I went up to the door, knocked on the door, and asked if I could use the phone so I could call my mama or my dad, which he wasn't there. But um, so I went in. They let me use the phone. I remember the phone was hanging on the wall, and I was talking to them, and a big roach ran out from the phone and ran. And the house was kind of dirty, and I don't even know if there was a dad in the picture or not. But it always stuck with me that she was kind of poor, and I never really had never really had, like I said, a interaction with her, relationship with her, other than just being a classmate. But I've always wondered what happened to her. I always, I look back now and I think, I wish I'd have been. I wish I'd have been a friend to her. I wish I'd have been a better friend. I wish a lot of stuff about back then. But you look back and you think, man, and you know, instead of being a judge, and I wasn't mean to her or anything. I got out there and I was pushing my motorcycle back, and I was there at the corner of Wall Triana and Huntsville Browns Ferry, and I was going toward Huntsville, and my mother drove up. Now my dad wasn't around, so my mother drove up, and she just rolled the window down and started yelling at me and fussing for me calling her. And here I am pushing this old motorcycle down the road, and my mother's driving along next to me, and she's giving me down the banks for calling. Now, thanks, Mom. Whatever. But I don't know why she was in the situation, and I can't find her. I've asked people, and some of y'all, I've asked y'all about it. But you look back at it and you think, man, she just needed a friend, and really, you don't know why people are in the situation they're in, and that's what he's saying. He says, be careful about judging people. Somebody might be poor because of his upbringing. It may be that they just don't know any better. I mean, that's what I look back at my life, and I see a lot of stuff that I didn't get until later in life. And I was telling somebody, the church there, Glen Iris, had something. They had a banquet or something, and so I was going to the banquet, and Miss LeGrand came to pick me up, and she probably had the girls in there with her too, or whatever. And I didn't. I mean, I just a dumb kid, and we had to wear black shoes to this thing. It may have been a concert or something. I don't remember. I didn't have any black shoes, but I had some brown shoes, so I spray painted them. And I thought I was doing a good thing. I thought I was doing something. And when my Christmas rolled around, my aunt and uncle, uh, Lavelle and Nancy Cost, they would always give us good gifts for Christmas. And of course, I used to steal my brother's gifts because they were cool too. Which that's another story. But they gave us some cologne. They gave me some cologne one time, and instead of buying new cologne when it got low, I just added water to it. Made it last a little bit longer. And I look back at some of the stupid things that I did as a young man, as a kid, as in high school, and and I just didn't know any better. And I mean, I'm not making excuses. I didn't know any better. But when I went to Pleasant, and one of the first weeks I was there, I don't know, second day I was there, I had seen this family in a trailer park, and we're passed right by, and I stopped and asked the kids if they come, and they came to church. And these kids are dirt poor. I mean, and I meant for the four older kids to come, but they brought five, and the one they brought, the fifth one, is still in diapers. And I did not mean for that one to come, but we had to take care of that kid, and we had to change his diaper. They ain't been back because I ain't really had anybody to take care of him and watch him. I've stopped and talked to him from time to time and see him there, and I'd love for him to be able to come, but. And then one of the kids, they came to the fall festival that we had, and one of the kids was being mean to one of the church kids, and one of the church kids, he's crying, he's upset, and you feel bad about stuff like that, and I hate that it fell on him that he had to put up with this kid, but a lot of times they just don't know any better. They just don't know any better. He might be poor because he gave up a good high-paying job that he could serve the Lord, but you don't know that. So why not treat them with respect? Why not welcome them in? He might be poor because he's living a lifestyle that is storing up treasure in heaven. He may be poor because the Lord wants him to be poor. You don't know. It's like I said, everybody's somebody in the church. Everybody's somebody in the house of the Lord, and the Lord loves poor folks. I got a whole bunch of verses here, but I'm not going to read all of them. But, we have no right to be judging and categorizing people, just because of their financial position. Romans chapter 14, verse 10. And this, I'm going to confess to you that I've been at this verse lately because, I see ministries and I think, well, that guy don't love the Lord. That guy ain't got good sense. That guy can't preach. He couldn't preach his way out of a wet paper sack, and that may be true, but I ain't got no business judging them. I can, if you don't line up with the Bible, you ain't right. But, motive, things like that, I can't judge. Romans 14:10. But why judgest thou thy brother, or why dost thou set at naught thy brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. You do what you do for the glory of God, and it's between you and God. And if I don't agree with it or I don't like it, I don't have to fellowship with you. I don't have to spend time with you, but I don't need to judge you and run you down either. So how do you treat folks in the fellowship? Well, I'm glad you asked. Romans chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. We then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak and not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification. So here comes somebody in and they're poor. Help them out. If somebody's, Brother Divers, I'm sure, I think he's passed away. He lived on the mountain across from the church there at Pilgrim's Knob. And he rented a trailer. I mean, his was the highest trailer on the mountain across from the church. And I'd never been up there. I'd never been up there because I didn't want to climb the mountain up there. But he'd come out of the trailer and he'd walk down to the road, and then Gertie would pick him up and bring him to church, and then drop him off, and he'd walk back up there. But Brother Divers is a sweet fellow, and he used to be a school teacher there in Buchanan County somewhere. And when his wife passed away, he just went to pot. I mean, he just fell apart. He didn't brush his teeth, didn't take baths, didn't clean up. And he's a sweet old fellow, and he'd get to the point where he was pretty bad, smelling pretty bad. Well, everybody knew it. We all knew that Brother Divers was not the cleanest fella around. And the women of the church, they'd bring him stuff called, I think called it a pounding. They'd have a pounding for Brother Divers, and they'd give him a basket of bath, soap and deodorant and toothpaste and toothbrush, and he didn't get the hint. He just wouldn't get the hint. So the problem was, we loved him and we just welcomed him in, and I was glad he was there. But the problem was that he would come in, he smelled awful, and so we just, the church members would stay away from him. So, he'd come in, he'd sit down over there, sit in the pew. Well, nobody sat, within 2 or 3 seats in the front of him or behind him or beside him. So there was a contaminated zone around him. So then you had visitors that would come in, and they don't know Brother Divers. They go, well, look, there's a spot over there, and let's go sit over there. So they'd sit over there and hold their nose through the service. And we loved Brother Divers, but I had to walk up there, and he just didn't seem to be getting the hint. And so I had to, and some of the ladies told me, you need to talk to Brother Divers because he's getting worse. And so I went over and parked on the road there, and I climbed the mountain, went up there, and it was the only time I ever went. And because he was always at service, and I could talk to him there, and I didn't want to climb the mountain, but I had to climb at that time. And I told him, I said, Brother Divers, you just need to, you need to take care of yourself, man. You need to clean up, and you need to, use the deodorant and soap that the ladies give you, and all that. He got mad, and when I left, he got mad, and I think he wrote to me. I don't remember if he wrote to me or just jumped on me there, and he was fussing at me, and he missed a service or two, but then he got to thinking about it, and he wrote me a nice note and said, hey, you're right, I'm sorry, and he just didn't know any better. But it's I'm a pastor, and I'm looking at the overall health of the church, and I want the church to be well. But I also I don't if I had to have a church full of folks who is poor but love the Lord, that's what I'll take. I want you to do what you can for the Lord. and put the Lord first. But that verse again says, "Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good edification." You know, I'm trying to help you. There's another verse in Romans 15 says, "Wherefore receive ye one another, as Christ also received us for the glory of God." And then in Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, it says, "Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves." And the sad fact is, what we do in the church, and you know, really in our lives, but what we do is we categorize people. You know, we want to we want to judge. We want to say, you know, we want to say the good folks and the bad folks, and we want to say the successful folks and the unsuccessful folks. And yet, somebody that's saved, God don't judge this way. God judges this way. The sheep and the goats. You know, the right. Are you right? Have you trusted Christ or not? And so I just thought I'd give you that because this has got a lot of stuff on here, and I don't think I'm gonna get it in the message on Sunday. But you know, I was just thinking about how that I, you know, as a kid they treated me when I rode the bus because I was a poor kid. Well, I'm glad I was a bus kid. I mean, I'm proud to be a bus kid. I'm proud of the bus ministry at Glen Irish Baptist Church down in Birmingham. They helped me as much as anybody else and anything else to be where I'm at now, doing what I'm doing. And I thank the Lord for it. But I thank the Lord for a group of people in the church that didn't judge me as being, being unuseful or unnecessary or being, you know, less than useful in the Lord's service. And so, you know, we need to quit judging on the basis of their financial ability and realize that God can use them. And you know, God can come. We say, well, God can clean them up. Yeah, and so can a good bar of soap. Say amen right there. Have a great day.